What's up, everybody? Gajewski here, back again talking college football, and today we are discussing Week 13, MACtion, Tuesday triple header. Cannot believe it is already Week 13, but alas, we have games to get into. Before we get started, if you like this content, please consider subscribing to the channel or leaving a like. Those two things help a small channel like this a ton, so thank you if you have done that. It truly does mean a lot. If you have a request for later in the week, please leave it in the comments. We'll get to as many games as we possibly can this week. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, we have a triple header for MACtion this week, which brings us to our first game, a battle of 7-loss teams. Akron, Bowling Green. So Akron is 4-7 right now. Bowling Green is 3-7. Neither of these teams can reach bowl eligibility. Akron couldn't do it anyway for some academic problems. But anyway, in this game, Bowling Green is a 3.5-point favorite. The total in the game is 47 points. So to get here for both of these teams, it's kind of been a winding road. For Akron, you beat your FCS opponent, Duquesne. Probably their best win came against Central Michigan, who's near the top of the conference. They did also knock off Buffalo, and in that game, they had a 39% post-game win expectancy. So those are two quality MAC wins for Akron. But when we most recently saw them last week, they lost in overtime to Kent State, 42-35. Now, 17% post-game win expectancy is not great. They allowed 8 yards per play. They only generated 5.6 themselves. But there were a lot of weird things that happened in this game. They muffed a punt. When they did that, essentially you had Kent State scoring a 9-yard touchdown drive. So you can't give up short fields like that, not even in the red zone. That was inside the 10-yard line. They gave up an 89-yard bomb to Darius Clark, and they missed a field goal. Not to mention they had another turnover on an interception inside their own 34, which was another Kent State touchdown. Now, Kent State fumbled at midfield. Akron tied the score with that. But still, I mean, by far the more costly mistakes came on Akron's side of the ball. On the other side, Bowling Green, they also beat their FCS opponent, Lafayette. They have a win over Liberty, which has aged poorly given Liberty's success this year, and 38% post-game win expectancy against Liberty. That was a game they probably should have lost. Their other win is against Toledo. They won that game by 5 points, but that game also had a 23% post-game win expectancy. You have 2 of your 3 wins coming in games that you arguably should have lost based on what happened on the field. Since then, this is the Toledo game we're talking. They lost to Central Michigan by double digits, lost to Kent State by a field goal, lost to Buffalo by double digits, and most recently, before their bye last week, they lost to Eastern Michigan by 6 points with a 39% post-game win expectancy. Some of this is because Bowling Green has been very hurt. They've been having to play a third-string quarterback. Drew Pine went down. Lucian Anderson, their backup, went down, and that's not all. They haven't had their lead rusher, Cameron Petaway, in terms of efficiency, that is. Linebacker Dorian Pringle and DB Keon Washington have been hurt as well. For Akron, it's a little bit cleaner. Miles Walker's been out for a while at receiver, and tight end Jake Newell keeps coming in and out of the lineup. DBs Alex Branch and DeMarco Johnson have been hurt for a while now, but we took an Akron side, and we took this at +4. It's currently 3.5. Those are juiced right now. There's a chance this does go to 3. So sometimes I'm wrong on this, but I think the proper time is to act now. With that said, the reason why, the main one, is this Bowling Green quarterback situation. It's a complete disaster. They've been starting Hunter Najm, who has a 51.5% completion percentage, 6.3 yards per attempt, 1 big time throw, 2 turnover-worthy plays. He's a third-string quarterback playing at Bowling Green. I'm not sure what we really expected to happen, but it's not like the players ahead of him have been significantly better. Yes, they've been better. They're kind of different. Drew Pine is also a pocket passer with a better completion percentage of 61%. He does have more turnover-worthy plays and 16 sacks, so there's good with the bad with him as well. Lucian Anderson, their typical backup, who did return in their last game but didn't get the start or really play. The only difference with him is he can run. So I'm not sure who they go with. I'm not sure they have a good option at all, regardless of who it is kind of the bottom line. And part of that is they're not surrounded by anything. The pressure rate is north of 40% for this team when you combine all the quarterbacks. They have a really rough offensive line, especially pass blocking. Run blocking, they're at 44th. That is their best skill. Pass blocking is 84th, some of that because the quarterbacks hold on to the ball too long. Right now, they're splitting one of their guard spots between Andrew Kilfoyle and Brody Bolin. Bolin has been better, but I'm not really sure that's going to make a big difference. 3 of your starters are above average. That would be Nate Pabst, Tunde Fadukasi, and Jake Burns, but the rest of this is pretty bad. Usually when you're rotating guards this late in the year, it's not a good situation to be had. And then your skill players are very lacking. This is a team that's doing basically exclusive 12 personnel. They're using 2 tight ends on every single play, sometimes 3. So you get into a lot of funky formations with Bowling Green. Jiron Johnson is their leading receiver. He's a tight end with 383 yards. And I don't really get it for the most part. Like RJ Garcia is a receiver who transferred in from Kansas State. Like this is not your average Bowling Green receiver. They have better talent than some teams, but it hasn't really manifested on the field, which I'm not sure why. Garcia and Jiron Johnson are the only players with more than 200 receiving yards on the team, and maybe that's a product of your quarterback getting hurt. But then, on top of being 120th in receiving efficiency, they're 105th in rushing efficiency. Austin Dendy, Markel Porter, they lead the backfield, but they've been injured. Cameron Petaway's been injured. It's been an offense that's just been riddled with them. Petaway's the most efficient. There's some rumors he maybe returns in this game. I don't know. A lot of these guys are just in and out of the lineup. And with the 12 personnel, they're kind of predictable to stop, which Akron probably should be able to do. For all of their lapses, this team is still 66th in total defense, and they've been better up front in most games. They did allow Toledo 6.8 yards per carry. Toledo's a good rushing team. Central Michigan, they're running that funky offense. They were at 6 yards per carry. They both had success, but of late, Akron's run defense has been better. The best way to beat them is over the top, as we've seen a couple quarterbacks do. DeQuan Finn, Kyle Kelly, Taquan Roberson were all average. Tucker Gleason and Drew DeShields bodied this defense. But Bowling Green's not really set up to do that right now. The best players for this Akron defense come up front. Bruno Dahl on the edge, Julian Laventure on the defensive line. You have 3 good linebackers with Summers, Cooper, and Spriggs. And on the back end, there's a lot of weak links. DeWalt and Reed have been good. Everyone else is kind of a mess. But right now, it doesn't really seem to me that Bowling Green is positioned to take advantage of this. And meanwhile, Akron's offense is definitely not high-powered, but I think it's a little bit safer. Part of the problem is, okay, Ben Finley has a 53% completion percentage, 11 big-time throws, 16 turnover-worthy plays. That is problematic, not to mention 26 sacks. It's a little bit high on the pressure-to-sack ratio, but this team has dropped 30 passes this year. 30 passes. That's nearly 3 a game. That's a 14.5% drop rate. Imagine what the stats would look like if Ben Finley just had pass catchers that knew what a jugs machine was. The infrastructure is not horrible. And honestly, I think these receivers, if you could start catching the ball, wouldn't be that bad. Marcel Williams has nearly 600 yards. He's at 567. Kyan Mason's at 464. Israel Polk's at 440. And these guys had 5 drops against Kent State too. Jordan Gant has been fine at running back. He's at 946 yards. He's going to break 1,000 here shortly. And the O-line, while it's weird and imbalanced, they are 26th in run blocking. They can run the ball. Their pass blocking comes in 115th. They are rotating a ton, which needs to be mentioned. Basically, you have 4 spots rotating on this offensive line. But you also have Delvin Morris, Masai King. They're not bad. I think this offensive line might be a little underrated. And Bowling Green's defense comes in 109th, 114th against the run, 99th in coverage. The one thing you can say is they haven't allowed more than 7.5 yards per attempt through the air in a month, but they were also annihilated by their opponents earlier this season, and it hasn't been the best slate of quarterbacks faced since then. On the ground, they've allowed 4.4 yards per carry in each of their last 4 games or worse. They're running this nasty defensive line rotation. Miles Bradley leads the group, but you're essentially seeing 8 guys play here almost evenly. It's kind of a mess. Outside of that, Gideon Lampron's been solid at linebacker. They haven't really found a counterpart for him after Pringle got hurt. Their DBs have been struggling a lot. MJ Cannon and Kyle Pascal are the top ones they have, but you can definitely throw the ball over this team, 99th in coverage. Akron's going to try to do that. For what it's worth, all the drops aside, Akron is still playing with an up-tempo pace and a very high pass rate, which is the opposite of Bowling Green's 12 personnel offense. So we're going to play Akron. We played a +4. I think 3.5 is fine. I would try to get this number rather than a 3. It's the MAC, as we saw last week with Kent State. Akron could very well lose this game, and it wouldn't be shocking. So you just have to know that going in. Second game is UMass taking on Ohio. Of course, at this point, UMass is winless, 0-10 this year. Ohio firmly in the mix, still at 6-4. There's kind of a log jam up at the top of the conference. And Ohio was a part of that. So with UMass, I don't really think there's too much resume-wise to get into. Their closest game was against an FCS school, Bryant. They had a 56% post-game win expectancy. But the fact that Bryant was in that game should tell you all you need to know. They've been blown out in 3 straight games. The only close one in the last month was Buffalo, and that should have been worse. But anyway, for Ohio, the last time we saw them, they dropped a game to Western Michigan. 5 yards per play. Western Michigan was at 6. Ohio threw an interception at the Western Michigan 38, but at the end of the day, Western Michigan was the team that missed 2 field goal short ones too, and had a turnover on down at the 34. Ohio's 34. So a rightful win for Western Michigan. Tough game for Ohio, but doesn't matter. The spread in this contest is 32.5 with a 51.5 total. Right away, we do show value on the under. Part of that is pacing. UMass's pace is basically irrelevant because they are so inefficient on offense. We'll get there. But Ohio's slow and they're run heavy. And motivation is a definite question in this game. As a 32.5 point favorite for a team that has aspirations to maybe get to the title game. But at the end of the day, like Ohio could score 52 points on their own, which leads me more towards the pass than an actual bet on this game. But we won't spend too much on this one. There's a more interesting game later on. Parker Navarro should be able to do whatever he wants. 62.5% completion percentage for him. The biggest concern is the 14 turnover-worthy plays, 12 big-time throws. He's just taken a few more negative plays this year than normal. And it's kind of problematic for this team because you do have efficient players across the board on offense. Say Bangura is a good rusher. Parker Navarro himself, both of them, they're over 5.4 yards per carry. You have an excellent wide receiver 1 in Chase Hendricks. He's going to break 1,000 yards this year. Rodney Harris is like a serviceable wide receiver 2. Your O-line is above average. At least you have 3 above average starters. You kind of do have 2 complete liabilities, Jordan Jones and Trent Allen, but is that going to matter against UMass? Probably not. For what it's worth, the best part of UMass's team is their defense, but even this has been slowly chipped away. So they come in 117th. The best unit they have is their front 7, but even there, you lose like Timmy Hinspeter. He was your best player at linebacker. He's been out. He's out for the year. Malachi Madison at defensive tackle has been out. They got back on Woha in their last game off the edge. He was limited. You've had multiple defensive backs out. The injuries definitely don't help this UMass defense, which is already a complete liability. But now, coming into this game, they've allowed over 10 yards per attempt in 3 straight games. They've allowed at least 5.2 yards per carry in each of those contests. Man, I mean, even though the efficiency numbers aren't like dead last on defense for UMass, the injuries they've sustained have really put them towards that dead last in the country. You can't just like lose your only good players for a defense that's already really bad. Can UMass score? Honestly, I thought they would be able to score a little more than they have. A.J. Hairston hasn't been the worst quarterback in the country. He's been close to it, though. 50% completion percentage. He has 6 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays, and only 15 sacks, which is pretty surprising considering how bad the O-line is. But this is another team that really struggles with drops. 15.5% of his passes have been dropped. Last week, he got benched for Brandon Rose at one point. I don't think Hairston is the main problem with this team. He's one of many. But if you were to try to diagnose it, I would probably point more towards your receivers dropping on-target passes in your O-line, allowing pressure almost every single play. On that, 136th in receiving, 133rd in rushing, 134th in pass blocking, 107th in run blocking. They're also rotating most of their offensive line. Only player who's even above average is Kyle Brown. Your running backs are both below 4 yards per carry, Brandon Hood and Rocco Griffin. You have 1 decent receiver in Jaquan Gibson. Him returning from injury does help. But, I mean, they're rotating a lot of these players just too much. Like, they played a lot of Dallas Elliott last week. He had 3 drops in 1 game. 3 drops. Why is he playing? Now you're playing Ohio's defense, which, to be fair, has shown cracks. They just allowed Brock Lowry to throw for 9 yards per attempt. A lot of QBs have had some level of passing success, including Daquan Finn, Noah Kim, and they've allowed 5 yards per carry in 4 of 7 MAC games. I guess I should say non-power 4 teams because I'm including Gardner Webb in there. But anyway, rotating a lot on the defensive line. You have 1 difference maker. It's Pius Ojugo at defensive tackle. So you're kind of reliant on your linebackers cleaning a lot up. Charlie Christopher has been awesome, but they've also faced injuries here. Michael Molnar didn't play again last week. He's probably your best linebacker opposite Christopher. He's been out. And then his backup, Cameron Hollabaugh, has been out too, which has forced Jack Fries into the lineup. It's a pretty big downgrade because your D-line is good, not great. That's how you come in 109th in run defense, 84th in pass rush. Secondary has one good player in Jalen Thomason, one bad player in Michael Mack. The rest is average, which makes sense given their 61st coverage ranking. But again, we're going to lean under. I'm not going to take this more than likely, just on the outside chance that Ohio puts up 52 points on their own, which is very possible in a game like this. But we have a fun one to close. Western Michigan takes on Northern Illinois. I won't lie to you. I was surprised when I saw this spread at 6.5 points. Total in the game is 38.5. My first instinct was, man, how is Western Michigan not a 10-point favorite in this game? Ran the model on the back end, and the number we got was 6.4. So we got an efficient number here, but man, maybe this is my bias. I think Western Michigan is a significantly better team than Northern Illinois. In non-con, this team played Michigan State, North Texas, Illinois. They lost to North Texas by 3. You played 2 Power 4 teams. That is what it is. And they played Rhode Island too, but I'm not going to get into that. In conference, you beat Toledo by 1 point, but 74% post-game win expectancy. You just come off a win against Ohio in a really important game we already discussed. You beat Central Michigan, who's at the top of the conference. The only game that they slipped up was Miami, Ohio, which was before DeQuan Finn left. And in that game, Western Michigan had a turnover on down at the Miami, Ohio 26. They also fumbled on their own 39. However, that could have maybe been worse. Miami, Ohio did kick 4 field goals. I will say Western's defense is good, though. But overall, it's a good body of work for this team. And then Northern Illinois has a horrific body of work. Their 2 wins are against Holy Cross and UMass. I guess they did beat Ball State as well, but that game was closer than it probably should have been. I mean, this team was blown out by Toledo, blown out by Ohio, lost to Eastern Michigan by 6. Double-digit loss to Miami, Ohio. Weird game against San Diego State that finished 6-3. I do not have a lot of faith in Northern Illinois. And when you get to this game and some of the stylistics with it, I guess let's first look at injuries. They're all on the Northern Illinois side. You have George Demopoulos, missed their last game at receiver. Jake Applegate at tight end. On defense, they didn't have Roy Williams or Jelani Williams on the edge, Alvin Gully at defensive tackle, or Ty Miles at defensive back. So I'm going to start with Northern Illinois. They made a quarterback change. Jalen Macon started their game against UMass. He threw 4 passes in the entire game. Now, he does have 120 rushing yards on the year. That's 6.3 yards per carry. And the coaching staff said he did enough to earn a start against Western Michigan. He looked decent against UMass, but it's UMass. My main takeaway is the coaching staff evaluated him in the preseason, put him 3rd string behind Josh Holst and Brady Davison. How good could he possibly be? I don't know, man. He runs at least, but if I'm Western Michigan, I'm loading the box. And that shouldn't be a huge problem for them. Northern Illinois is a bad offensive line. They're 111th in pass blocking, 77th in run blocking. A lot of these guys come in around average, but you have a complete liability at guard in Abiathar Curry. Evan Malcore is the only player that's very clearly good on this team. Illinois did start doing the 6-0 lineman thing. This is a trend in college football this year, but they played UMass. This is a new trend. I don't really think this is going to work against Western Michigan. I mean, it's just a different ask. In the run game, Telly Johnson's up to 5.8 yards per carry. Siobhan Wright's at 4.1. They're a decent tandem. They basically just run the hot hand in this unit. I don't know, man. They're not going to pass unless they have to, evidenced by the 4 pass attempts. So Derry Rogers leads the team in receiving, 473 yards there. Only one other player is above 100 yards. That's Gary Givens. This receiving is a horrible unit. So I'm not surprised they're trying the 6-0 lineman thing and running every single play, but it's just I don't really think it's going to work. Western Michigan's 59th in total defense. Their weakness is their secondary. They've been beat by a couple quarterbacks like Joe Labus for Central Michigan. Rhode Island had some success against them. But even that, they did a good job against Tucker Gleason from Toledo, Drew Mestemaker from North Texas. And the only teams that have run efficiently on them are Ohio and North Texas. Those are 2 of the better run offenses on their schedule. Up front, like Nadame Tucker's an excellent edge defender, and they rotate a lot of guys, and none of them are bad. A lot of them are parked around average, but it still keeps you fresh, and there's no liabilities in that unit. And then even though that unit is pretty average, your linebackers are excellent with James Camden and Sefa Siapaya. The back end is the problem, man. You have one good player, that's Tate Halleck. But is this Northern Illinois team even going to try to pass? Probably not. So I think the advantage is very clearly with Western. And then when they have the ball on offense, Brock Lowry has been awesome this year. Part of Western Michigan's problem early in the season was their QB rotation, but Lowry's taken hold of this job. He has a 64.5% completion percentage, 7 yards per attempt, 6 Big Ten throws, only 1 turnover-worthy play, and 14 sacks. He's a very good runner, a little bit more of a game manager, but he can throw the ball, and he does lead this team in rushing, 4.8 yards per carry. One of the biggest surprises for this team has been the struggles of Jalen Buckley, 3.9 yards per carry, coming off a good season last year. They're rotating a little more, but it's nice to have Lowry that they could use in the run game in a pinch. Talik Williams leads the team in receiving. Balin Brooks is second. Avion Chenault third. It's a somewhat efficient receiving room. Talik Williams is at 474 yards. This offensive line has not always been the best. They're 97th in both pass blocking and run blocking, with Raheem Anderson leading the group at center. A lot of average players here. Zach Vaughn is the only liability. He does play left tackle, so that's kind of a concern. But overall, this unit not really adding to or detracting from the success of the offense. In Northern Illinois, I do not buy this defense ranking 83rd overall. They're 54th in run defense, 98th in coverage. But man, you look at Northern Illinois and the schedule played. Okay, you had Maryland and Mississippi State in your first 2 games. San Diego State has really struggled offensively. Miami, Ohio put up 25 points. Okay. Eastern Michigan, bad offense. Ohio blew them out. Ball State is a terrible offense. Toledo blew them out. And then they played UMass. How many good teams, good offenses are actually on this schedule? The answer is very few. So I'm not really buying the Northern Illinois defensive metrics with this weak schedule of opposing quarterbacks. Their strength is run defense. The only team that really got them is Ohio at 6.4 yards per carry. But they're running an 8-man rotation on the defensive line. The best player in their front 7 is linebacker Quinn Erweiler. They just don't really have any other difference makers outside of him. And in the secondary, they have one good player too, in Jasper Beeler. The rest of this is a huge rotation. So I don't know. I'm tentatively in on Western Michigan. I think this might move to a -6 and maybe even further. I don't know. Northern Illinois is not a team I've been impressed with. I've been betting against them a lot this season and probably will continue to do so. So this is a disagreement that I personally have with the model, which generally is an error for me, but we're gonna wait and see where this comes in. Right now, it is a lean towards Western Michigan or pass. But that'll do it for today. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any feedback, please leave it in the comments or suggestions. Looking for those. But otherwise, thank you again. We will catch you again probably tomorrow for more games. But until then, good luck. We'll see you later.